My name is Emily and I am 27 years old. I never imagined I would end up writing something like this. For most of my life, I tried to be the calm and easygoing one. I avoided arguments, kept peace at family dinners, and pretended little hurts didn't sting. I was always the one brushing off unfair comments and favoritism. That favoritism always seemed to tilt toward my younger brother, Ryan. He was the golden child in every sense of the word. If he wanted something, he usually got it without question. If I wanted something, I was told to wait my turn. If I pushed back, I was called selfish for even asking. You would think those dynamics fade when you grow up. But in my family, they only grew sharper. The breaking point started on my birthday a few months ago. It was supposed to be a simple evening with cake and close relatives. I was excited because after years of saving, I had finally bought my own car. On top of that, I had managed to buy a modest house near the city. Those two things represented years of working double shifts and saying no to vacations. They represented me sacrificing fun so I could build stability. They were mine, fully in my name, and I was proud. But pride is not something my family shared with me. Ryan, who was 23, had a completely different lifestyle. He floated from one unfinished course to another and from job to job. He would quit as soon as things became hard. And every time, my parents bailed him out like it was his right. When he blew through his rent money, they covered it. When he wrecked his car during a reckless joy ride, they bought him another one. I told myself his choices weren't my problem. But that changed on the night of my birthday dinner. Ryan showed up late with his usual smug grin. He looked like someone about to make a grand announcement. Everyone had just finished singing for me when he clinked his glass. Then he casually declared, "By the way, I'm taking Emily's car." At first, the room went silent. Then a few relatives chuckled nervously as if they weren't sure whether he was joking. But Ryan wasn't joking. He had this look in his eyes, daring me to challenge him. I put my fork down and asked what he meant. He repeated himself, this time more casually, as if it were already settled. "You've had it long enough," he said. "Mom and Dad said it's only fair I use it now." The word fair stung more than I can describe. I bought that car with years of sacrifice, and suddenly it wasn't mine anymore. I tried to push back, saying it was my hard-earned money. But my dad cut me off with his usual tone of authority. "Emily, don't start. Your brother needs it more than you. You'll manage without it." That sentence pierced me deeper than I expected. It was said so matter-of-factly, as if my hard work meant nothing. It was like Ryan's needs were automatically more important than my years of effort. I tried to laugh at the absurdity of it. "So because I worked hard, he just gets it handed to him?" I asked. But my mom silenced me with her cold stare. "Stop being dramatic, Emily. Family shares." Those words weren't new. They were the same ones I had heard since childhood. But then Ryan leaned back with his smug grin. He said maybe Dad was right, maybe I should give up the house keys too. "If you don't want to hand over the car, then why not the house? You don't deserve all that space for yourself." The audacity made my stomach twist. But on the outside, I stayed calm. I nodded slowly, pushed my chair back, and said, "All right." The table went silent again. They didn't see it as defiance. They saw it as me finally giving in. But lying in bed that night, I realized something inside me had changed. Instead of swallowing my bitterness, I let it grow. I replayed every memory of being told to let Ryan have the bigger slice. I remembered every time I was told to give up for his sake. And for the first time, I stopped excusing it. I started planning instead. The next few weeks felt like living in a pressure cooker. On the surface, things looked normal. We still had family dinners, still received phone calls, still played the roles we had always played. But underneath, tension buzzed like electricity. Ryan had taken my silence as approval. He started borrowing the car without asking. One Saturday morning, I found my driveway empty. No text, no note, just an empty space where my car had been. I called him, furious, and he answered like nothing was wrong. "Relax, Emily. I'll bring it back later." That became a pattern. He'd take the car, return it low on gas, and leave trash inside. When I complained to my parents, hoping they'd finally see reason, they brushed it off. He's your brother, Mom said. Stop being so possessive. The word selfish began haunting me. They said it with every breath, as if defending my own property was selfish. Meanwhile, Ryan treated my car like his own. And soon it wasn't just the car. One evening I came home from work to find Ryan in my living room. His shoes were on my coffee table, and he was using my streaming account. When I demanded to know how he got in, he shrugged. Mom gave me the spare key. Those words sent a chill down my spine. My own mother had given away access to my house without telling me. From that moment, Ryan treated my place like his second home. He crashed on the couch whenever he wanted. He raided my fridge and even once invited his friends over while I wasn't home. I came back to strangers drinking in my kitchen. When I protested, Ryan clapped me on the back. Don't worry, sis. You've got space. I smiled tightly and shut my bedroom door. But inside, I was boiling. Every invasion built a wall inside me. It separated me from the version of myself who always gave in. Mom and Dad's manipulation sharpened too. Whenever I pushed back, they accused me of changing. You used to be so considerate, Mom would say. Now you're making family life harder. But what they really meant was I wasn't bending enough. And if I didn't bend, I became the villain. The breaking point came during Sunday dinner. Ryan joked loudly that I never let him use the car properly for trips. Dad put his fork down and agreed. If you're not willing to share, maybe it's time to hand it over to someone responsible. The hypocrisy made my chest tighten. Ryan had wrecked 2 cars and nearly lost his license. And yet I was the irresponsible one. I chewed my food quietly and let them think they'd won. But something inside me snapped that night. I knew reasoning with them was impossible. If I wanted to protect myself, I had to stop playing fair. And from that night, I started plotting my escape. The weeks after that Sunday dinner were some of the darkest I had ever faced. It wasn't just the humiliation of being dismissed again, it was the violation of knowing my own family saw me as a resource, not a person. Ryan grew bolder with every passing day. He started texting me like he already lived in my house, announcing his plans instead of asking. Thinking I'll take the upstairs room, he wrote. Better light for streaming, you know? At first, I ignored him. But silence only gave him confidence to escalate. Soon he was calling me at work, leaving voicemails about how I was dragging things out. He told me Mom and Dad were backing him completely. Mom joined the pressure campaign with her sweet but manipulative voice. Emily, honey, you've always been the responsible one. Why make things so difficult? When I resisted, she sighed like I had broken her heart. I can't believe how selfish you've become. That word again echoed through me like poison. Selfish, when all I had done was protect what was mine. Dad was more direct and harsh. One evening he pulled me aside and whispered sharply, family property should benefit everyone. If you keep resisting, Ryan will take matters into his own hands. It was a threat thinly veiled as advice. My stomach turned but I kept my expression calm. A week later, I came home from work to find Ryan's futon in my garage. Along with it were boxes of his clothes stacked like a declaration of ownership. When I confronted him, he smirked with zero shame. Mom said I could. Besides, you have plenty of space. That night I sat on my bedroom floor in tears. My chest felt crushed with hopelessness. It seemed like no matter what I did, they would twist it against me. If I argued, I was dramatic. If I stayed silent, they claimed victory. I couldn't go to the police. On paper, Ryan was family with a key, and they would laugh me out of the station. If I changed the locks, my parents would storm in with guilt and threats. I felt like I was trapped in a cage of their making. But in that darkness, something inside me shifted. I realized fighting head-on was useless because they thrived on conflict. So I smiled instead. I started nodding at their demands like I was surrendering. When Ryan dumped his stuff in my garage, I said, "It's fine." When Mom scolded me for being selfish, I pretended to think about it. When Dad threatened me, I responded softly, almost apologetic. All the while, I was making plans they couldn't see. The first step was securing my documents. I moved my deed, mortgage papers, and banking info into a safety deposit box at the bank. Then I rerouted my paychecks and closed the joint savings account my parents once forced me to keep. That way they couldn't touch my money. I even reached out to a lawyer friend from college. I asked about property law and how to protect assets from family disputes. On the surface, I was the same quiet Emily. But underneath, I was sharpening my strategy. Their constant mistreatment only fueled me. Every smug grin from Ryan, every guilt trip from Mom, every lecture from Dad added more resolve. I knew eventually they would push too far. And when that day came, I would be ready. Meanwhile, work became my safe place. A sudden resignation from a manager opened an opportunity for me. I stepped into the role temporarily and proved myself quickly. Within months, I was officially promoted. My salary jumped, and for the first time in years, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. That financial cushion gave me strength. I upgraded little things, better clothes for work, healthier groceries, even a gym membership. With each step, my confidence grew. At work, people respected me for my dedication. Unlike my family, they saw my worth. That respect changed the way I saw myself. I realized I wasn't weak or selfish. I was capable and resilient. Meanwhile, Ryan's life spiraled. He kept bouncing from job to job, quitting whenever things got hard. His friendships were shallow, based on what he could provide or promise. And with no real stability, he leaned harder on me. But I never gave him the help he expected. Instead, I strung him along with vague answers. I'll see what I can do. Maybe later. Enough to keep him guessing but never giving. I also started building friendships outside of family. I reconnected with old college friends and joined a local community group. These new relationships reminded me of something vital. Family wasn't defined by blood but by respect and support. With time, I became financially stronger and emotionally freer. And my family began to sense their grip slipping. At Sunday dinners, I noticed their eyes on me. I spoke with confidence, dressed better, and carried myself differently. Ryan made his usual mocking comments, but they didn't sting anymore. Mom's guilt trips rolled off me like water. Dad's stern voice lost its power. For the first time, I saw them not as authorities but as manipulators. The turning point came one night when Ryan showed up drunk at my place. He pounded on the door at 2 a.m. demanding to be let in. Old me would have opened the door and tried to calm him down. New me watched from the window, unmoved. I called him a cab, shut the blinds, and went back to bed. By morning, his furious texts filled my phone, but I ignored them. It wasn't just about rejecting him. It was reclaiming control over my own life. Each time I refused to bend, I grew stronger. Each silence became a form of victory. But my parents didn't take kindly to my change. They doubled down, calling me constantly, accusing me of forgetting where I came from. They were losing control, and desperate people rarely go quietly. That desperation set the stage for their next move. One evening I visited their house out of habit. The moment I walked in, I knew something was off. Ryan leaned against the fireplace with a smug grin. On the coffee table sat a thick folder of papers. Dad gestured for me to sit. We've been talking about your house. My stomach tightened, but I stayed calm. What about it? Mom folded her hands like she was announcing good news. We think it makes sense to put it into a family trust. Ryan grinned, unable to hide his excitement. That way I get my share. It's safer for everyone. They slid the folder toward me. Inside were half-baked legal forms with my name and address. The plan was simple: I would sign, and the house would no longer be mine alone. It would belong to all of us. I closed the folder slowly and met their eyes one by one. Old me would have panicked or argued. This version of me simply smiled. I'll think about it, I said softly. They took my answer as hesitation, as weakness. But inside, I was already planning my counterattack. Later that night, I brought the folder to my lawyer friend. He flipped through it and laughed. These aren't legally binding, he said. If anything, they're evidence they're trying to coerce you. That word, evidence, stuck in my mind. I hadn't thought of collecting proof before. From then on, I documented everything. Every voicemail, every threatening text, every manipulative conversation. Ryan's demands, Mom's guilt trips, Dad's warnings, they all became part of my growing archive. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was building a case. The more they pushed, the more leverage I stacked. And when the final confrontation came, I knew I would be ready. Spring turned into summer, and by then the tension in my family was unbearable. Ryan spoke as if my house was already his, and Mom and Dad pressed me every day with guilt. They believed they were close to winning. But what they didn't know was that I was quietly preparing my escape. I had already met with a realtor in secret. The housing market was booming, and my modest house had nearly doubled in value. The equity was enough to change my future. And selling would remove the one weapon they kept trying to use against me. So I listed the house quietly without telling anyone. Within days, I had multiple offers and one buyer ready to pay cash. The papers were signed on a Thursday afternoon. I drove home with the final documents in my bag, feeling freer than I ever had. That night, I didn't answer calls or texts. I simply enjoyed the silence of knowing the house was no longer theirs to target. The next morning was when everything unraveled for them. Ryan pulled into the driveway, blasting music, ready to declare his ownership. He walked up with a cocky smile, his phone out as if he was recording some victory. But then he froze. Right in front of him was a bright red for sale sign hammered into the yard. His smug grin collapsed instantly. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. I stepped onto the porch, coffee in hand, calm as ever. "Oh, that house?" I said. "It's already sold. Papers signed yesterday." His jaw dropped like I had slapped him. You can't do that. This is our house." "No, Ryan," I replied steadily. "It was always mine. And now it belongs to someone else, out of your reach." Before he could speak, Mom and Dad pulled up in their car. They looked smug too, expecting a celebration. But when they saw the sign, their faces drained of color. Mom's lips trembled, Dad's jaw clenched tight. Ryan turned back to me, sputtering nonsense. "You can't just sell it without us." "Actually, I can," I said, my voice calm but cutting. "It was never yours to begin with. And you have no legal claim." For the first time, Ryan had no comeback. Mom's voice cracked through the silence, trembling with guilt. "Emily, how could you? We just wanted to be included." I tilted my head with a faint smile. "Included?" I said. "You wanted control. There's a difference." Dad tried to speak but no words came. He was a man unaccustomed to losing. Finally, I looked at all of them. This was never about family. This was about entitlement. And now that power is gone. With that, I turned back into my house, leaving them stunned in the driveway. My heart pounded, but I felt lighter than ever. The following days were chaos for them. My phone buzzed with furious texts from Ryan, guilt-soaked messages from Mom, and sharp warnings from Dad. "You betrayed us. Families don't do this to each other. This isn't over." I didn't reply to any of them. By the end of the week, the sale was final and the money sat safely in my account. I signed the lease on a new condo across town. It was smaller, but it was mine, untouchable, unseen, hidden from their reach. For the first time in years, I slept soundly. The real test came when I attended one last Sunday dinner out of courtesy. I walked into a room thick with tension. Ryan sulked with his arms crossed, glaring at me. Mom's eyes were swollen from tears, Dad sat stiff like a wounded soldier. Ryan spoke first, his voice filled with rage. "You ruined everything. Do you know how stupid you made me look?" I looked at him calmly. "Maybe you shouldn't count on things that never belonged to you." Mom reached out, her voice trembling. "We just wanted to be part of your success." "No," I said firmly. "You wanted to take it. You wanted to strip away the one thing I'd built for myself." Dad's voice came next, low and threatening. "You've turned your back on this family." I met his eyes without flinching. "No. You turned your back on me the moment you decided Ryan mattered more than my work." The table went silent. For once, they had no rehearsed guilt trip to throw at me. I stood slowly, placing my napkin on the table. "This is the last dinner I'll attend. I wish you well, but I'm done playing your role." Ryan scoffed bitterly. "You think you're better than us now? I gave him one last look, not with anger but with clarity. No. I just finally realized I don't have to be less than myself to make you comfortable. And with that, I walked out. The air outside felt cooler, lighter, freer than it ever had before. Weeks later, I heard from mutual friends that Ryan had defaulted on another lease. He had been forced to move back with my parents. Their finances were cracking too, worn down by years of bailing him out. Tension filled their house like smoke. Meanwhile, I thrived. My promotion at work brought new projects, recognition, and even an offer from another company. I started building a real life outside of their control. My friends respected me, my colleagues valued me, and I carried myself with pride. I started building a real life outside of their control. My friends respected me, my colleagues valued me, and I carried myself with pride. The condo became my sanctuary. Quiet mornings with coffee, evenings with books, and weekends filled with laughter from friends who cared. No one barged in uninvited. No one demanded keys or money. No one called me selfish for protecting myself. One evening, I stood on my balcony overlooking the city. The skyline stretched endlessly, reminding me of possibilities. That was when it truly hit me. I wasn't just free of their control, I was finally living my own life. The sweetest revenge wasn't loud or cruel. It was walking away with dignity and building a life they couldn't touch. Ryan may still be chasing easy wins. My parents may still defend him at their own expense. But none of that defines me anymore. My worth isn't tied to their manipulation. For years, I believed being the easygoing one meant peace. But real peace only came when I stopped bending to them. Now, I choose myself. And in doing so, I found freedom they can never take.